Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for being with me today. Together with you, I would like to discuss the effects of COVID-19 on diversity and inclusion. We had the pre-talk, and you know that I question certain things, and I question if diversity and inclusion may be neglected in times of crisis, or is it something that we should be paying maximum attention in times of crisis? So it may help us really get more resilient during this time. But before jumping into our topic, let me introduce you before. So you are a professor of international politics at the University of Vienna in Austria, and you are the scientific director of the Austrian Institute for International Affairs. And I also know that you do some research on gender integration in the military and security sector. It's very interesting. So could you please tell me what brought you doing some research in that specific field?
Thank you, Oya. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for the introduction. What drove me to this particular research interest was always an interest in inequality, structural insecurities, stereotyping, all of these things. And when I started with this research many years ago, there was a tendency to always discuss women and gender issues with regards to traditional topics. So family, sometimes the workplace, and all of these, more feminine spheres. So I was interested in the most, masculinistic areas of society that one could think of, and look for gender there. Look in the military, in the private security industry, and more recently in border security, because I think you can learn a lot from looking at these spaces where you would not automatically expect gender to be an issue.
Mm-hmm. 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 What was the, I'm just curious to know, what do you argue, if you can give me more information about what was the question in your mind maybe that you were looking for an answer?
Well, I observed that the way gender and security were thought to be intertwined changed quite a lot. So my original research on women in the military, I was looking at why does it change so quickly that sometimes we think of women as absolutely incapable of military service, and at other times it's the most natural thing. So how does that change? And is this just a linear process where we're just seeing progress over time, or is there a more nuanced process? And what I found is that recruitment conditions and the military personnel needs are in fact very influential on the societal beliefs about what women can actually do in military jobs.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, what can military and security sector learn from females?
Well, first of all, I don't think the issue of inclusion should necessarily be tied to women having to contribute anything extra because they're women, right? I think they should be included because it's their right as citizens, as humans, and they don't need to be better or more than men to be included. So that's a very rights-based approach that I have. On the other hand, and you can ask military commanders that are more that are well versed in this issue, and they will all tell you, of course, this changes operational effectiveness, having women on board, having different perspectives on what security is, what a security threat is, and how the security of the whole society, a comprehensive security approach, can be achieved. And I think that cannot be achieved if you're only selecting personnel from a very limited spectrum of the population.
Thank you. Very interesting. To be honest, I have no idea what's going on in terms of gender equality in military and the security sector. But I know what's happening in the private sector right now. I used to be the executive in specifically in financial services, and as you know, I have been working as executive coach. I work with global executives across the world. If we come to the effects of COVID-19 on diversity and inclusion, I did some research. And also I try to talk to my friends who work in private sector. What I am hearing is, Saskia, COVID-19 has had bigger effects on the professional lives of females than males. Right? First of all, I have no idea how diverse is academia in terms of gender and race. So I would like to ask you, what have you experienced personally in times of COVID? Because I know that you have a little daughter. And do you really think that COVID has bigger effects on the lives of women than men, because it was the women who were required to go back to their traditional roles? It was the women who were required to accompany to their kids when they do their homework. What would you like to say about it?
Well, personally, as you mentioned, I have a small daughter who's still in kindergarten at this point, and that of course affected my ability to be professionally productive to a great extent, because daycare was closed, schools are closed, and from my own experiences and those around me, I can say that a normal professional life was not possible. With a small child at home, they need constant attention, there's just no space. And also with bigger kids that need schooling, that's an additional layer of work and care work that mostly women contribute. I wouldn't say that it got hard for all women to the same extent, and I also don't want to emphasize my own experience as a particular hardship, because at the same time I see, junior colleagues, students in the same position, and they have additional problems. Those living away from home have additional problems. So there's all kinds of challenges, but I think we're already seeing, and the numbers and the research confirm this, that it had a bigger impact on women's lives as a group. And my own field, academia, there have been numerous reports that not only have women been less productive in contributing journal articles and submissions, but men have been more productive. So we're not only seeing a large burden on women, but we're seeing certain burdens even being lifted from men. And that's of course highly problematic, and that's already ingrained, in the gender relations, in the way we conduct research, way before the pandemic. But I think the pandemic brought it into very sharp focus for a lot of people.
And how diverse is academia?
Not enough, I would say, and especially if you look to the higher levels, to professors, to everybody who's not, on a temporary contract, who has some job security. I think at that point it gets quite male and it gets quite white, and we're seeing this problem all across the academy, especially right now with the Black Lives Matter protests, and how it links to universities, and how academics of color are now being targeted more, and struggle quite a bit, and also don't often get the institutional support from the universities.
Yeah, diversity goes beyond gender equality. And I have also concerns about about the risk of xenophobia or racism, because the people may think that the virus always comes from the unknown, the outside. I heard that in the United States, say, for example, the virus has been already called as Chinese virus. So the more we open the borders, the more we interact with others come from different backgrounds and societies. There is the risk that we can get this virus. Do you think that in Austria the situation is under control right now, but it's not the case in other countries? What do you think? The closing the borders may have effects in the long run in terms of xenophobia or racism?
Yeah, I think right now you're already seeing stereotypes being promoted, and as you said, tying the pandemic to that, everything that is outside, that is unknown, that is foreign. That's probably a very not very concrete feeling amongst the population, but it's certainly there. And on top of that, we're seeing that right-wing groups really deliberately use the virus to argue against, a diverse, multicultural society. And we're also seeing right-wing extremists. My colleague Daniela Pisoio works on this, and she found that right-wing extremists all across the world are really using the pandemic to promote their conspiracy theories and arguing that finally the virus has achieved everything that they couldn't so far, namely the closing of the border and the narrowing down towards a very nationalistic approach.
I see on TV in Vienna, that I'm based in Vienna as well. So, and stay, and spend your holiday in our lovely country this year rather than, traveling to different locations. And I told them this is nationalism. And so, and it's very...
I'm also very concerned about all the campaigns that ask you to buy only locally and to buy only in Austrian, and specifically in Vienna. So I think with our history here in Austria, asking people to only buy from specific stores is very problematic.
And Saskia, what do you think? What role universities, civil societies should play in promoting diversity, and how they can affect politics, societies at large?
That's a big question, but my initial response would be look into your own structures and your own hierarchies and address them first. Because we often see, scholarship and activism to promote certain values of equality, but then not living them inside their own institutions. So I think that is very important, that we internally have structures that promote equality across a range of issues, that we make sure that there is a diverse staff and that the staff is also distributed equally across all the hierarchies in an institution. And for my own institute, I can only say that you have to come at it from two sides, right? You have to produce the scientifically sound, neutral, fact-based research, but on the other hand, you have to keep it accessible and you have to get people engaged in it. So not lock yourself in the ivory tower, make sure you have your own equality structures in place, and then communicate to the outside that these values are important.
And have you, specifically during this time, the pandemic time, and after the death of George Floyd, did you notice specific actions or strategies that the universities or the civil societies in Austria were demonstrating in promoting diversity?
Well, I cannot speak for all organizations. I guess that's a very broad field, but what I did observe across European academia probably, was a lot of statements being issued, a lot of verbal support for Black Lives Matter movement, for example. But at the same time, letting go of staff with non-permanent contracts, which of course consists to a much larger part of racialized minorities and women. So having a very visible, support for that kind of diversity and that kind of movement. And then on the other hand, in the personnel and staff policies not living up to that same standard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you have, as being the scientific director of the Austrian Institute for International Affairs, what's the plan in your mind going forward? Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what is on everybody's minds, making plans in very uncertain times. We are planning on, keeping on with the virtual work and to improve on that and to expand our outreach probably even, and probably even use this as an opportunity, thinking beyond the usual circle of people that we invite because we know them and we can get to them and they can get here easily. So once you move away from the geographical level, then of course very different people and very different spaces become available for exchange, and I would like to use that. Having said that, on the other hand, I think we all feel how important the actual interpersonal connection is for any kind of work, for any kind of project. So if we can probably not go back to large events for some time, I still think it's important to create spaces where we can, sit down across from each other at a table and exchange ideas.
That's great. And thank you for sharing your thoughts, ideas with me in that regard. If you were me, Oya, this might, standard type of question, I would say. What last question would you like to ask Saskia?
I think I would probably ask a difficult one that I likely will not be able to answer in the full, but I would ask about how can we, make all these things we know about structural inequalities, how can we translate that into our everyday interactions in the workplace?
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the main challenges. It's very easy to point at structural problems, but then to live a different life within the same structures that you're criticizing, it's very difficult.
Yeah, there is a difference between knowing and doing. So what we can do, I think that's the question, to transfer this cognitive level awareness into our actions and behaviors. Yeah, it's a lovely question. I think
so, and I think a key to it is living a certain kind of kindness towards each other and generosity, but also learning to set boundaries for yourself and teach others, especially women, junior women, on how to do that, because the demands on women's time and women's emotional care and all of that in the workplace is quite big. So also learn to say no and to set your own boundaries. Only then you can be an effective professional in any area, I believe.
Thank you for your time. I'm so happy that we discuss all these issues, even though we don't have answers at the moment. But the more we question certain things, the more options and answers and solutions we may have. That's why I wanted to have these interviews with you and with my other guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.